Good morning and welcome to another session of Football Fitness with Total Sports. My name is Rodet Yila and I'm a biokineticist at the High Performance Center of South Africa. And what we'll be doing today in this next 45-minute session is a exercise routine that's geared towards helping footballers limit or reduce their risk of injury, thereby improving their performance. However, this is not limited to footballers only, so if you play rugby, hockey, basketball or netball, basically any field-based or court-based running sport, you can still stand to benefit from these exercises. So what we'll do is we focus on your hip mobility and hip health, your knee stability and knee strength, and then your ankle balance and proprioception. In the next couple of movements, if you do feel that there's any pain or discomfort, please make sure that you don't try to push through the pain, rather revert to an exercise which you found to be comfortable in the previous exercise sessions or earlier in the class, or you revert to the exercises prescribed to you by your physiotherapist or biokineticist. It's important to make sure that you always perform the movements with good control, maintaining proper form and technique, rather than rushing through the movement or pushing through any pain. To quickly go through the list of equipment we'll need for this session, you'll need a weighted object. So I've got a backpack that I've filled up with some weight. You will need an exercise mat or a towel if you don't have an exercise mat. It's basically anything to provide a little bit of cushioning from the ground. And then we'll also need a raised platform that is stable enough to withstand your body weight, and we'll also be jumping onto it, so make sure that it doesn't slide away, it doesn't collapse as you land on it, or it doesn't give when you've got your body weight on there while you're moving. You can always keep your sweat towel nearby and a water bottle to help every time you need a sip between sets. The sweat towel will be used during one of the exercises, but if you don't have a sweat towel, you can always use a little bit of a cushion or a large towel that's rolled up. So to get started, we'll go into a little bit of a warm-up, and what we'll do is a little bit of skipping. If you don't have skipping ropes, you can just pretend that you're holding skipping ropes while you hop on the spot. And we'll just try and wake the body up a little bit while we increase our body temperature, get our breathing rate up, and get the heart rate up as well. So you can feel free to go as fast or as slow as you want for the skipping. It is quite cold this morning, so I'm just going to increase my skipping rate a little bit. Almost there, last couple of seconds. Good, and you can relax. Next up, we'll go into a little bit of jogging. You can either jog on the spot or jog around the area you'll be working out this morning, but ideally you don't venture too far away, otherwise you won't be able to hear when we're changing up into the next bit. So starting off, just a little bit of a jog. Get your arms and legs moving. And then from there, we're going to transition into butt kicks. So we're just getting the hamstrings a little bit more involved. And then from there, transition into high knees. Well done. So that's a little bit of the warm-up where we've got our body temperature up, we've woken up our body a little bit by starting to move. Now we'll go into a couple of dynamic stretches where we furthermore wrap up with the warm-up. So starting off, you can hold on to an object if you need help with balance, so either the wall or the couch. Otherwise, you can always just use your hands for counterbalance. We're going to swing our leg back and forward, up as high as we can in front and at the back, and you'll do 10 per side. Good. Next up, we'll go into a couple of hamstring scoops. So we're going to go for 5 per side. The idea is to shuffle your feet as you're walking. So you just need a little bit of space in front of you. One leg is straightened with its toes pointed upwards. You bend the other leg while you push your hips backwards, and you'll find a little bit of a stretch down the back of your thighs. So that will be the hamstring region. You're going to try and reach as low to the ground as possible, but keep your chest forward, shoulders locked back. So you don't want to hunch over as you're reaching towards the ground. So it's nice and low, shuffling your feet and reaching again. So you're pushing your hips backwards while you're keeping the stretched leg straight. The other leg is bending to help get your hips low. So I'm turning around, shuffling my feet and getting through 5 per side. Good. Next up, we're going to the walking balance of stepping up onto the toes while we're pulling up at the back and reaching for the ceiling. You should feel that the front of the thigh is now being stretched, and we'll continue with the same idea of turning around when you run out of space. Good. From there, we'll have a seat on the ground just to continue with our warm-up bit. So we're starting off placing your hands behind you, shoulder width apart, feet in front of you, hip width apart, and you're just going to drop your knees from side to side, and you'll do that 5 times per side, just to loosen up a little bit around the hips. Good. So once you've done your 5 per side, we'll go into our first bit of the session, which is the activation block. So for the activation block, we've got 3 exercises. We're only performing 1 set of each, and we'll start off with the first demonstration where we'll need our sweat towel, or you can also use a rolled up towel or a cushion. It's basically anything which you can form into a thick shape like that. And the idea will be to place it up against a wall or any firm object that will not move away as you push into that object. So I'm going to fold up my rolled up towel so that when I place it against the wall, I'm going into a quarter squat position, so there's a slight bend in the knee. My other knee is flexed a little bit more, so there's more of a half squat, and you're pushing into that object as hard as possible while I'm stabilizing with the glutes of the other leg. So the standing leg is doing the work while the leg that's against the wall is pushing. You hold for 3 seconds and then you relax. You're going to do 5 repetitions of that. So the pulsing movement is to push for 3 seconds and then you relax. You can stand up. So you ease from the squat position and then you go back in for your next rep. So once you're ready, you're squeezing 3 seconds and then you're relaxing. That's 4, I've got 1 more. Switching over to the other side, once again, a slight bend in the knee, more of a bend with the leg that's pushing into the wall, and you go into your quarter squat, squeeze for 3 seconds, and then standing from there. You should feel that it starts burning on the outside over here. Again, it becomes quite difficult to maintain that position for 3 seconds. Last one. Good. Right, so we'll keep our towel nearby because we will be using it in one of the exercises to come. Next up, we have a plank walkout where you'll have 2 options for this. So the first option will be the modified version where you are in your modified plank position, meaning my knees are down, my hips still remain relatively low to the ground. You don't want to leave your hips behind so that I've still got enough weight being distributed between my upper and lower body. So that will make sure that your pelvic stabilizers have to do the work to stabilize the hips. You don't want your hips tilting from side to side or sagging, so your belly button mustn't drop towards the ground. You do, however, lower your belly button as you push your hands further and further away. So you're walking your hands out, get as low as possible while maintaining a straight line between your shoulders, hips and knees. And then you're walking back up. If you are able to, you'll do the full length version. So that will be straight legs. Once again, keeping a straight line between your shoulders, hips and knees. You're walking out, and then from there, you're walking all the way back. So remember, it's not about how far forward you can walk your hands, it's about how straight you keep the line between your shoulders, hips and knees. So a nice straight line that is stable, it's not rocking and you're not sagging. That is the proper way to do this exercise. You don't want to walk your hands far out, but you're leaving your hips behind because there's no straight line between the 3 joints mentioned. So for that, we'll do 5 repetitions. Starting off, I'll just go through a couple of reps with your modified position so you can see how that's done, and then I'll go into the full length position. Alright, so once you finish with that, you'll grab your sweat towel again and we'll go into the last exercise of the activation block. So for the last exercise, we will be laying flat on our back, once again folding up the rolled up towel. We'll place that in between your knees and we'll keep our hips, knees and ankles all at 90 degrees. So basically we're just bending them into 90 degrees. We'll keep our hands out to the side, so we basically keep the shoulders flat on the ground. And from here, we're going to squeeze the towel as hard as possible while dropping the legs from one side to the other. The idea is to reach as far as possible without lifting the shoulders and without releasing the squeeze. So you want to squeeze all the way through and drop the knees as far as possible. If you find that as you drop your knees, your shoulders come up, you need to go back to the point where your shoulder was still touching the ground, and then that will be your end point. So don't drop your hips lifting the shoulder, try to keep the shoulders flat at all times. You'll do that 5 times per side. Keep breathing through this movement. You don't want to hold your breath. Your muscles need oxygen, so as you're moving, just continue a controlled breathing pattern and don't try to hold your breath. This is my last one. Alright, so moving into the next component, which is the mobility block. Once again, we've got 3 exercises that we'll be doing 1 set of each, and the emphasis now is extending through the full range of movement. So we're going to be looking at mostly your hips and your ankle joints now. So for the first one, we'll go into a frog squat with a hip hinge. So with your feet in your deep squat position. So for those of you who have joined us in the previous weeks, you'll see that your deep squat position can have your toes pointing outwards. As long as your knees follow that line, you don't have to have your toes pointing forward. But if your toes do point outwards, your knees can't point forwards. You don't want your knees collapsing inwards like that. You also want to make sure that your chest is forward, shoulders are locked back, so it keeps your back nice and straight. And what we'll do is we'll drop the hands on the inside of our legs. If you can, you reach right down to your feet, and you can see why it's called the frog squat. So this is the frog position. Once you're holding onto the feet, we push our hips as high as possible into that tall position, back down and stand. So to show you what that looks like from the side, it's all the way down, keeping your back straight. Once you reach your feet, hips up and into your squat again. For those of you who are limited by either the low back or the ankles, feel free to stop the movement at the point where you start compensating by either lifting the heels, dropping inwards, or rounding the back. So to show you what that means is when you're doing that type of movement, then you can stop around the knees and then you'll do your hinge from there. So if you were to squat towards your knees, from there you stop, you hinge, you still feel the same stretch in the hamstrings, and you stand. Once again from the side, stopping just below the knees, hinging, and then up. You need to do 5 repetitions of that, and then we'll move into the next one. Good, so nice and easy. Once you finish with that, we'll go into the next one. So for the next exercise, it's a standing hip circumduction, where we're looking to get through the full range of movement around the hip joint, but it also involves a little bit of balance. So you need to make sure that your foot is stable, your knee does not dance from side to side. Keeping our hips level so that there's no tilt from the one or the other side. You can even place your hands on your hips. We're going to lift our knee up as high as possible. It goes as wide as possible and down. You'll notice that my hips are still pointing forward. So that's the advantage of keeping your hands on your hips. You'll know when your hips start rotating, your fingers start pointing to the sides. Once you touch down, we just bring it back around to the top, and that will be 1 repetition. We need to get through 5 per side. So it's up as high as possible, open up and down. It's just touch down of the toes and back in front. So you can pretend that you're trying to stand over or lift your foot over a little hurdle without using the rest of your body. Last one. Switching over to the other side. Last one. Good stuff. Going into the third and final exercise of the mobility block. So we're going to start off in a half kneeling position, and what we need to do is place our foot out to the side. The idea will be to move from this half kneeling position with your toes pointed forward, to rotate your toes pointed up as you open up your thoracic spine. So the thoracic spine is the trunk portion of your body, and what you'll do is go from a place of your hands being on the ground with one hand behind your head, toes are pointing forward. As we lift our elbow towards the ceiling, we're pointing our toes towards the ceiling as well, and then as we drop down back to returning position, your hand goes through the keyhole, dropping your shoulder towards the ground. So you should find that your low back as well as your upper back all get stretched out, and it's a little bit of mobility flow for your spine. So once again, 5 per side. Opening up nicely, take a nice deep breath in, and then breathe out as we reach through. So that's 5, moving over to the other side. Good. So that's 5, and with that we finish our mobility block. You can have a quick water break, and then we'll move into our stability block, which is the first block where we do 3 sets of the 3 exercises, whereby we'll go through a demonstration for each, and then we'll continue in our own time. So starting off, the first exercise of our stability block is a commando plank, where we're going to start off in a high plank position. So the high plank position is essentially with your arms straight, directly underneath your shoulders, hips are level with your shoulders, and your back is not sagging, or you are not lifting the hips up in that position. So it's a nice flat back. What you need to do is go into your low plank position, so basically onto your forearms, keeping your hips as level as possible, and then back into your push-up position. So it's literally moving from high plank into low plank continuously. You need to do 5 repetitions. You can lead with whichever arm you prefer, and each set you can change the leading arm. So I'll start off leading with my right arm, which means that from my high plank position like this, I lead with the right arm going down and coming up. So 5 repetitions. If you struggle with a high plank position in the full length hold, you can go into a modified position where it's on your knees. Once again, keep your hips level, don't leave your hips behind, and don't start with the sagged hips like that. Okay, going for our first set, 5 repetitions. Try to keep your hips as level as possible. You don't want to shake your hips around while you're moving up and down. Good, so that's the first 5. Next up, you'll need to keep your raised platform nearby. So we'll be using this for the box jump. So the reason I've included the box jump in our stability block is because we're focusing on the way that we're landing. So one of the uses of the box jump is to address landing mechanics without the impact of landing on the ground, where there's a lot more force going through your legs. Please make sure that it's a height that you're comfortable with jumping onto. You don't want to make a height too high and then you end up hurting yourself, especially if you end up clipping the lip of the object you're trying to jump onto. Once again, please make sure it can hold your body weight and it won't shift or collapse as you jump up. So starting in the ready position, where the ready position is in that quarter squat position, you're jumping upwards, landing with 2 feet, landing in a quarter squat as well. So you're actually absorbing the weight as you land. If you feel that you can jump higher, rather jump higher, making sure that you land. Don't keep stacking object onto it, especially if it makes it more and more unstable. So to demonstrate what we're looking for, it's a quick movement down and up with the hips so that we land with the explosive movement, and ideally it's a soft landing as well, so you don't want to land with a thud. Once again, you're doing 5 repetitions, and from there we'll continue with the next exercise, which is the third exercise of our stability block. Please step down from the box as well. You don't want to jump up onto the box and then jump back down. Good, so that's the 5 reps for the box jump. Once again, making sure that your landing mechanics mean that it's landing in a squat position, your knees are following the same line as your toes. So if my toes are pointing forward, my knees point forward as well. The next exercise and the third exercise for our stability block is a reverse lunge into a step up. So we'll be using the raised platform once again. For my reverse lunge, I'm stepping directly backwards, and the leg that's stepped backwards will be driven up onto the box. The opposite knee will drive as well. So we are moving through 2 exercises in a flow where we can get through 5 repetitions of each. So I'll use my left leg to be the one stepping back and stepping up for the first bit, and then I'll move into the right leg straight afterwards. So it's 5 per side. You're going through from one side onto the other side. And that's number 5. Switching over. You should always make sure that your heel is on the box so that you can drive through your hips when you're standing. And that's 5. Alright, so that is the first round of our 3 exercises. If you felt comfortable with those, please continue in your own time. If you do feel you need a little bit more help, for the next set I'll help you with some slight modifications, and then for the final set you'll decide if you want to go back to your progressed version or if you want to continue with your modified versions. Have a quick water break and then get started with your second set. Okay, so for those of you continuing in your own time, you've done 1 set now, you still need to do another 2. Once you finish that, you can have a water break, and then we'll go into our final block. For those of you who are going to be sticking around with me for the modified versions, we will start off with the modified commando plank. So I'll be on my knees, and we're going from your high to your low plank in that position. Please make sure that the shoulders, hips and knees stay in straight line. You don't leave your hips behind, and you're only moving in that direction. The first set I led with my right hand, so now I'll lead with my left hand. Going for 5 per side once again. It's all the way down, all the way up, and you're keeping your hips level. Good. So that's 5 for your commando planks. Moving into the box jump. So for the box jump, the modification would be to essentially lower the height that you're trying to jump onto, making sure that you get comfortable with that and you build on your confidence. You also want to take your time to assess what you need to do. So from this position, I think through the movement and then I execute. You don't want to try execute the movement while you're still thinking about what you're meant to be doing. So from here, I'm telling myself the hips are moving backwards and downwards quickly, and it moves upwards and forwards even faster. So it's that loading and exploding movement where we're jumping up, landing with our knees following the same line as the toes. Always try and make sure that you land as softly as possible. So it's like a ninja jumping up and landing, making sure that it's always a quarter squat position when you land. Good. So for our final exercise, it's the reverse lunge into the step up. Once again, the modification would be to lower the height, get comfortable with driving through your heels, and if you want, you can even break up the 2 movements so that your reverse lunge is separate from your step up. So from your reverse lunge, you stop, and then you continue with the same leg that you were lunging backwards with into your step up. Just makes it a little bit easier to understand your movement patterns, and as you get more and more comfortable, you'll pick up your speed. So it's your reverse lunge into the step up. So now that you know what you're doing, you're going to try go from the one straight into the next, and that makes it easier to get used to that movement. Once again, I'll start off breaking it up. And then getting more comfortable so there's less of a delay in between. And then finally moving from the one straight into the next. Okay, so those are our 3 movements. We've done the modifications. You can now decide if you want to go through your progressed version or stick around with the modified version as you still get more and more comfortable. Don't be afraid to continue if you feel that the modified versions are more applicable to you. It will take some time to get used to it, and the more often you do it, the better you get at it. So to finish up our 3rd and final set, we will go through the commando plank. This time I'll go back into the normal version, straight legs again, and you're going for 5 repetitions, keeping the hips level. Going into our box jumps, once again, making sure that you're focusing on the landing, that's the important part. And wrapping up our reverse lunge into the step up. Well done. So you can have a quick water break, and then we'll go into our final component, which is the strength block. So for the strength block, we've got 3 exercises that we are once again doing 3 sets of. To start off with the first set of each, the first exercise is the judo push-up, where you'll have 2 options. So your 2 options will be either the normal version, which will start off in your push-up position or the high plank position, pushing your hips as far back as possible. You're going to aim to lower your nose towards the ground. As you get there, start lifting your chest away from the ground as you drop your hips. So your option 1 is to move your hips directly into your starting position, or if you can, you go all the way down and reverse all the way back. So those are your 2 options. The first one is slightly easier because you're just reverting into your starting position again, but the second option, you are reversing into your starting position. That makes it a little bit tougher. You need to do 5 repetitions. The idea is to control the movement, so you're shifting your weight from predominantly your shoulders into your chest. Good stuff. So that's the first one. The next exercise is a wall sit with can-cans. You need to ideally sit against a wall. If you don't have a flat wall nearby, make sure that the door that you're using isn't a door that will be used with someone opening it up as you're leaning against it. What we'll do is we'll sit with our hips and knees at 90 degrees, leaning with your back flat against the wall, feet relatively close together to help with balance, and then one leg at a time, You straighten the leg, showing a clean set of heels, and you're holding for 3 to 5 seconds. You're going to alternate between those two movements, and that will be your can-can movement. So you do 5 per leg, making sure that your hips are not rocking from side to side as you're lifting one leg up. You're not allowed to hold onto your thighs for this movement, so hands are either together or at your hips, across your shoulders, whichever you prefer, but you're not allowed to hold onto your thighs. Keep your back flat against the wall. Your thighs will start shouting at you, but you need to fight through it. Good, so that's our 5. The last exercise of this block is a hip thrust complex, where we've got our raised platform. I've just placed my sweat towel onto the edge of the box so that it's a little bit padded, and I'll keep my weighted object nearby. For this, you'll need to place your weighted object on your hips, and the idea is to push your hips up as you control through your legs. You'll do a complex, which means we'll start off with one leg, move over to the other leg, and then you do both legs simultaneously. So your starting position with your shoulders on the raised platform. I've got my weight on my lap, so basically keeping it at your hips. And the key part is to keep your chest pointing in the same direction, so that when I'm in this position, my hips are down, your chest isn't pointed up when your hips are down. You don't want to exaggerate the spine, the curve in your spine. So from this position, everything is in the same direction. We'll go one leg first, lifting up for 5 repetitions with one leg, and then 5 repetitions with the other leg, and finishing up 5 repetitions with 2 legs. Please make sure that your shoulders stay on here. It's not your head or your back, your head or your neck, and it's the upper back that will allow you to pivot up and down like that. So 5 repetitions with one leg, into the other leg, when you finish, rather grab a seat on the ground rather than placing your elbow at an uncomfortable position. So that is one set of each of the repetitions. Please make sure that you follow through the option that's comfortable for you, but still challenging. For the next bit, I'll go through the modified versions. Those of you who felt comfortable with those, please continue in your own time. We finished one set, you need to finish another 2 sets of each. So your first modified version will be reverting into your starting position by just moving your hips back. So it's all the way down, get my chest up, and then I revert to starting position just like that. Moving into the wall sit with can-cans. For this one, this does not have a modified version, except if you maybe sit a little bit higher, putting less pressure onto your thighs. So you're still holding that can-can position for your 3 to 5 seconds. But if you need, you can sit a little bit higher so that there's less weight through your quads, a little bit more weight into your glutes. Okay, and finishing up the hip thrust complex. Once again, starting with one leg. Going into 2 legs. Good, have a water break and then we've got 1 more set. So now you'll decide if you want to continue with your modified version or if you want to go into your progress version. For those of you who did the progress versions, please continue. Afterwards, we'll keep our water bottle nearby as we go through a quick stretch to wrap up the session. Starting off with your judo push-ups, I'll go back into the progress version. Last one of each. There we go. And the final bit, your hip thrust complex. Well done. So that's that. We'll quickly go into a little bit of a stretch. You can keep your water bottle nearby and sip on it while we wrap up with the stretch. Going into a half kneeling position. One knee should be directly underneath your body, nice straight line through your hips and into your shoulder. The other leg is bent and forward. What we'll do is you'll squeeze the glutes to get your hips forward. You should feel your hip flexor over here a little bit more. And you'll reach up with the same hand to furthermore elongate that straight line through your knee, hip, shoulder, and now the hands. Try and reach the ceiling in that position. Dropping your hips all the way back, rocking on the heel. Try to reach across your body. You should feel the stretch along the back of your thigh. If you can't reach your toes, just hold on to whichever part of your shin that you reach. Switching over to the other side. Starting once again. Half kneeling, squeezing the glutes, lifting the hand up, reaching for the ceiling. Dropping the hips all the way back, rocking on the heel, reaching across. From there, going into a half kneeling position with your leg out to the side. Just going to rock your hips all the way back, going into your tripod position with your hands in front of you. Move the hips forward to allow your leg to wrap around the back, and then drop your hips back again. Going over to the other side, so half kneeling out into a tripod position. Moving your hips forward to reach around the back. And then to wrap up into a full length plank where you push your hips up as high as possible, walking your hands all the way back towards your feet, standing up at the end. Well done everyone, I hope that you guys enjoyed that. So 45 minutes where we covered all aspects of your hips, knees and ankles with a little bit of upper body involved, and most importantly it's to ensure that you are learning the movement patterns correctly. Feel free to check out the previous weeks to get a better idea of what we've covered over the past couple of weeks and making sure that you are practicing the movements so that you can get better. Make sure that you tell your friends about the classes to join us next week, and feel free to check out the other classes offered on the Total Sport website. I hope that you guys enjoy that and stay safe. Cheers.